Hey, how you doing? This is John, and welcome to It's Clobbering Time. This is on John's Long Box. Here we got Mark Pilgrim, my adorable co-host, and tonight we're going to talk about Thanos versus Darksied.
Well,
I know that there's like
not as
thunderstorms.
even as you think.
There's thunderstorms across the state, so a couple of people won't be able to join us.
Maybe
And as usual, we filibuster a bit until a bunch of people show up.
we have to filibuster. Yeah.
Is it raining by you?
No, it's fine. Beautiful. Hot. It's hot. 90 degrees today.
Oh my God!
Not humid.
It's hot.
Summertime early.
It's hot and humid today too by me. And it was like at work, there's steam fitters that were welding, and because of the hot, humid conditions, the vapors weren't dissipating.
Yeah. I heard you talk about that.
Oh my God, it was just unbearable.
I hate to say don't wear a mask, but there should be some sort of mask you should.
Oh yeah, that's the kind of conditions you do wear a mask.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, there's a time and a place for everything. Like you don't use a screwdriver when you need a hammer. You know what I mean? You don't wear a mask.
Although my wife had an uncle who used the back of an axe as a hammer, but he's from the old country. You know what I'm saying?
That works. We use our pliers as a hammer.
Yeah, I know.
Electricians, we call it.
Well, I want to ask you, since it's hot and humid, but you're like 5 miles under the surface, is it any cooler for you down there?
Well, I'm back in my position. For a while, things were slow, so I went to a job where there was a guy who's already, they call it the locker pup, the guy who handles all the material.
I don't. We used to have him at 9X.
Yeah, so I was his backup because I was the new guy to the job, but he's on furlough now for 6 weeks, so I'm back in that position. So now I'm going to be all over the building. But for the past couple of weeks, I was just on the third floor of a building where it's kind of nice.
In the building,
every day the foreman gives you a job, you just do it. They leave you alone, and I like my foreman. But when they're welding and you're breathing in fumes and you're so focused,
you might as well smoke.
Realize that. Like I was starting to get mad. I was like adding mistakes. You know, I'm like, what? Why am I making mistakes? My foreman calls me down and goes, John, go outside and catch it. And then also my brain cleared, and I'm like, oh, that's why I'm making mistakes. I'm like suffocating.
You might as well start smoking again.
You know what's funny is they kicked the guy off the job for smoking, and then the next day there's fumes in the whole building. I'm like, thank God nobody's vaping. You know, that would be bad.
I don't know about the vaping. Is the vaping really bad for you?
I don't know, but the fire department
Roller doesn't think so.
Because of the fire department, you're not allowed to smoke.
Oh, yeah.
But we can inhale fumes all day long. You know.
I drove a lot today. Yeah.
What do you drive? A van?
Yeah, I drive a little Mercedes Metris.
Okay.
It's like one of those little Ford vans you see. Like
okay.
The United States Postal Service drives them.
Okay.
They don't, but they stopped making them in they're big in Europe, but they stopped making them last year in United States because I think the post office is not going to buy them from Mercedes anymore. It's not super fancy. It's quick for a van. Like it's a quick truck. Drives like a car because it's a Mercedes, but it's not just a van. It's not anything special.
So it's clobbering time. We're going to talk about Darksied from DC. We're going to talk about Thanos from New York, Thanos from Marvel. And who would win in a fight? You know, this is our proxy comic book conversation. I don't know. When you guys were 14 years old,
right?
You know, and we would just, you know, you'd get to heated, fun arguments. You know, Spider-Man could be bad. That's what this show is. So I'm, just filibuster people. And as always, it's an open invite, meaning anybody can come in. Yeah, anybody can come in. Otherwise, you can listen to Marcus and I.
The last couple. Well, I know about these characters, but sometimes when I don't know, it's great. I mean, you guys James knew a lot of mythological stuff. I know some, but not as much as he does. And you can always argue with him when he's wrong or not because he's, that's how it is. And so it's nice when that happens.
I like that because T-Buddy had something to say, but he didn't want to argue. And I'm like, well, it's clobbering time.
It's clobbering time.
So me and T-Buddy are going to do a specific show based on some Old Testament stuff that I didn't know. So that's going to be funny. So that, it was good to have a little bit of conversation. So anyway, I'm going to look for some images. Marcus, who do you want to be the champion for? It looks like it's me and you for the time being.
Well, I'll do Thanos.
Okay. For some reason I thought you were going to pick Thanos.
Well, I don't know. I know both of them, but I think I'll pick Thanos.
Okay, so you're picking Thanos. So I'm looking for a good Thanos image, not of the movie. I want a comic book image.
The movie Thanos wasn't bad. Didn't look bad though. For a movie image, for a movie costume, that was all right.
Yeah.
And he played Thanos well. I mean, Thanos was really the hero of Endgame. If you're an environmentalist, Thanos is the hero. As I say,
Thanos.
something actually.
Okay, ahead. So tell us about Thanos. I just wanted to get an image.
Thanos is created by Jim Starlin, and kind of as an answer to Darkseid, like his Darkseid. But when he admits that he was inspired or ripped off Darkseid, but Thanos became a separate character. It was in Iron Man 58. I remember because I had that comic for a long time, and he was a little thinner and lighter by then. He didn't develop into the giant Thanos until Captain Marvel.
It was also the first
saga started in Iron Man.
Right. It was the first appearance of Drax the Destroyer and Iron Man.
I think it was in Iron Man because I think him and Mike Friedrich were planning to do it in Iron Man first, but they got fired because Stan Lee hated the net issue number 62, and they were fired. It was a silly comic. Anyway, so Thanos is always a megalomaniac, and at first, when he was in Captain Marvel, he wanted to take over the world, and he was looking for the Cosmic Cube or the Tesseract we know from the movies.
Right.
And he was going to take over the cosmos. And he never should be defeated. Thanos is one of these guys. Darkseid similar, but Thanos particularly never can be defeated by the Earth's heroes. And even Captain Marvel, really, he defeats himself.
Right.
Because he always does, even though he's a brilliant tactician, he's a brilliant military mind. He can beat anybody up. He's about Hulk level power, strength, physical strength. He has energy bolts, which does whatever the writer wants them to do at the time, but usually obliterates things. And he always counts on an outside source, whether it's a cosmic cube or the glove of gems or power stones.
Yeah, the Infinity Gauntlet.
The Infinity Gauntlet. So he killed Thanos a couple of times. Jim Starlin killed him in Captain Marvel, and then he came back in Warlock in the weirdest way, became kind of Warlock's friend. But still, he's a big, brutish figure who wants to take over. I think it was during the Warlock run where we found out what he really wanted to do was have a love affair or marry Death. He's completely nihilistic. And looks a little like Don from Don Draws, as a matter of fact. And,
right. It's funny. I thought I was looking at a picture of Don over here.
Yeah. I'm not. My comments are coming up in here. Wow. So there we are.
I mean, one of the things that we have to emphasize is Thanos is Greek for death. Thanatos is the Greek god of
Thanatos. Death. See, that's where, and you say that reminds me, which is nothing not you can find, is that because I've read about Starlin's one of my favorite creators.
Yeah,
you could tell by the way I draw comics. That was his inspiration was Thanatos. Right. It was the Greek god of death, and so and Starlin's interested in not just superhero comics or cosmic comics, but in religion and in life and death.
Right, and his brother is Eros, who became Star Fox.
Star Fox, yeah.
And I forget, were they twins?
They were twins. That's right.
Right. So Thanos was born.
He's literally, and he's an Eternal because they decided that the Thanos and his dad Eros, they were Eternals because Marvel didn't have an answer because they weren't Greek gods and they were just I forget now. It's
they preceded the Eternals.
They did precede the Eternals, but they eventually became Eternals.
And they were just like godlike beings that lived on Titan, the moon.
Titan, that's right. They were godlike.
Later on,
does Thanos has some sort of immortality? I don't think he's immortal, but he keeps coming back from the dead. So what's the difference?
Right.
And if anybody really wants to read a great Thanos story, they have to get Marvel 2-in-1 Annual 7 and Avengers Annual 7. That might be one of the greatest action cosmic comics ever.
Yep.
And that will tell you. And they killed Thanos then. And then he came back in Warlock because he's never really dead.
Right. Well,
he's way more powerful. He could beat up Thor and Iron Man at the same time.
Right.
He could kick the crap out of he's immensely strong. He's got power blasts. He's not as complicated as Darksied, but he wants to, be with.
He also has mental abilities. Like he could mentally battle Zavir. Like he has every power has
every, as a Marvel character. He has every Marvel power. He's not as. I don't think he's as powerful as Galactus. Strong as
the Hulk.
But he was smart enough to fool Galactus.
Right. He's got energy blasts. He's got mental abilities. He's got basically immense wealth. He's got an army of aliens that follow him.
Right.
And later on, well, his father was Mentor. I forget what his wife's name was, but apparently, his mother was his first victim.
That's right.
That's the lore. He killed his mother, and he was the first ugly being born out of all the Eternals.
And he was bullied because of it.
Right. He was bullied. He was made fun of, and he became like a recluse. And then later on, Jack Kirby created the Eternals, and Zuras and his brother Mentor had a philosophical difference. Zuras took a group of people to live on Titan, and then from Titan there was like another philosophical and they sent the Eternals to live on Uranus, not my Anus, Uranus, and that was like the first penal colony of the Eternals.
You said Uranus and penal in the same sentence, John.
Yeah, Uranus has a penal colony, Marcus. How's that for child? And we got Zart. How you doing, Zart?
Nope, there it goes. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. You got a camera?
No, not at the moment. All I have is OBS and no cam on it. Is that okay?
It's okay. I prefer seeing faces. It's more friendly, but we'll make do. And I'm just finishing a little history lesson.
And to forget about Thanos, was like in the 70s. He was in Marvel feature. He would that was that great story with Iron Man and the Thing ended up walking home from the desert.
Yeah.
And Daredevil and the Avengers, and he was manipulating the Avengers and the Marvel team up. That's where they brought him back. Starling didn't even bring him back. He was in that Byrne issue of Spider-Man and Warlock team up, which is where Spider-Man got that link to have it to be called on in the Avengers. But he was all over the 70s. Like he really, and then in the 90s when they brought him back hard with the Infinity Gauntlet, which is good, which is one of their better crossovers.
So Tony Grego says Starlin has stolen from Kirby about 3 times that he knows of: Thanos, Mogul, and the Lord High.
Well, Mogul. That's true, but he was trying to create a Thanos for DC.
Right. It's almost
Darksied.
Darksied was first, then he copied Thanos, and then he brought Mogul over, who was a copy of Thanos, who was a copy of.
He made more money from Mogul in his little cameo in a DC than he did for Marvel until he sued Marvel Films so they could get some money for Thanos, since he was the whole thing.
So Zart. So let's Zart. So Zart, what do you want to say?
Let Zart talk,
we're not coming to conclusions yet. We're giving people the history. So anything you want to say? Anything you want to bring up?
Yeah, I guess to add just to something, because you're going over Thanos at the moment.
Sure.
One thing I know of, you brought up, you didn't know if he was immortal. It happened later on in the comics, but it was kind of shown that the reason he had this obsession with the personification of death is death visited him when he was a child, I guess after his mother tried to kill him, and kind of groomed him to be this entity that was a threat to everybody. So he's kind of preordained to be like an eternal threat to the Marvel universe, kind of similar to what Darkseid is.
Right. Yeah.
Some of the later stuff I will not know. So thank you.
Well, once they officially named him as an Eternal, as in the race of Eternals, he can't die. Like
the Eternals officially, they're not gods though.
No, they're not gods, but they can't die. They tap into some sort of celestial energy. The way they described it in the Marvel universe is you have to destroy like 75% of their molecules in their body for them to be permanently dead.
Yes, so I remember that now.
So literally, if you kill an Eternal, the energy will recreate them and be reborn. So yeah, but again, this is the kind of stuff that I love about comics. Is again, Darkseid. I'm mixing them up now because they're so similar. Thanos was created years before Kirby created the Eternals. The Eternals were outside of Marvel. They were like Jack Kirby had his own little pocket dimension, and then when Kirby left, I think it wasn't until Thor.
It was Thor. Roy Thomas. Thor.
Roy Thomas folded the Eternals into Thor.
Yeah, he really kind of shoehorned them in. I wouldn't say that
always bothered me. How can you have Zeus and Zuros, on the same planet? Like
what did they do? They took the forgotten one and he gave him some of Hercules' 12 labors.
But I would have been happy if the Eternals stayed outside of the.
That's fine. It gave you. I like the way Keith Polar drew them, though, so that was pretty cool. The comics weren't bad, but they were definitely shoehorned.
I love the Eternals, but I would have been. The best thing is they brought the Celestials into the Marvel universe, and everybody loves the Celestials.
I love this. They had that.
Eric's got my back. He says the Eternals do not fit in Marvel. Yeah, the Eternals work best when they're on their own. But I do love the concept of these towering. Are they robots? Are they people in entity? You know what I mean? Whatever this.
I love that like Kirby has them like walking on the floor of the ocean, and there's like like a cruise ship going by. Like to see, you can see the size. It's just a kind of only like he could do that really that well.
And according to Kirby, they were supposed to be like angels. That was his.
Kirby's something else.
I love Kirby's imagination. But anyway, back to Thanos. So he was always obsessed with some sort of MacGuffin. Like you said, it was the Cosmic Cube. And then later on, in Warlock, they introduced the Soul Gem.
That's right.
And the Soul Gem, it wasn't one of 6. It was just they called it the Power Jewel. They called it a bunch of things. And then they kind of settled on the Soul Gem.
It started out as a parasitic gem with kind of a mind of its own, which Warlock didn't want to use, and it would kind of force Warlock to do, and he would just be so upset because he's now destroyed this person's whole soul and personality.
To me, it was an homage ripoff, echo of Michael Moorcock's Stormbringer. For those of you,
that's absolutely right. Yeah,
because there's no way Jim Starlin didn't read those Michael Moorcock novels.
Well, I think if you read Jim Starlin's now getting up there, I think he just admits it all. I think he mentioned Moorcock in the creation of him.
Yeah. And when the Soul Stone was first introduced, they never mentioned the other ones. I forget where they came. Does anybody know where the Infinity Stones as a collective group of 6
they called them stone, and they decided that there was a keeper for all the stones. One of it was like the Gardener he was in the Hulk, that great Michael Golden cover, and we realized he had a stone. The Collector, who collected all the heroes that the Avengers fought off, and he had a stone.
And did the Champion of the Universe have the Power Stone that made?
Yeah, the Champion had the Power Stone, and then there was one other stone. Who I'm picturing?
Did the Kree have one?
What was his name? He was in the Hulk a couple of times, and he was in Silver Surfer, and I can't remember his name. White hair, big white mustache, big job character.
The Stranger?
The Stranger, yeah, that's it.
What did he debut in X-Men, like 14 or something like that?
Something like that, yeah, with an overcoat on, yeah.
I know they were a key part. So now Thanos, to me, it became like kind of a video game. Got to collect all the stones and get the ultimate power,
Well, he had
it. And it started with Thanos, and that's just one of my pet peeves is there's so many comics now that are just like, got to collect all the gems,
Well, that was one of the first ones, so.
He was the first, so I always forgive the first guy.
You got to forgive the first one.
But the thing I was just talking this today about my foreman. My foreman's wife started reading the Infinity Gauntlet comics.
Oh, those are good.
And she was just like, she says she doesn't like the Thanos in the movies anymore. She goes, the guy in the movies is kind of a dope. She goes, but the guy in the comics was he was a serial killer who wanted.
He was terrifying. When I was sick a couple of years ago, my son got it for me, the trade paperback, and I reread it, and I'm like, I still don't know how they beat him. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, Thanos was a serial killer who became obsessed with the personification of death.
That's right.
Death was a real bee. I'm not going to say the whole world because kids are watching. But he was a real beat. She was a tease. She.
Oh yeah. She really pushed him.
Led him along, and whatever he did wasn't good enough. He killed this guy. That wasn't enough. He blew up this planet. Wasn't. So then he says, "I'm going to kill 50% of the universe to impress Death," and that's it. Then he finally gets it. He kills off 50% of the universe. It had nothing to. He was not good. There was nothing redeeming. He wasn't trying to save the resources of the universe.
No, they turned him into a Green New Deal guy in the movie.
Right. And so, sorry, anything you want to add before we move on to Darksied?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you've already kind of listed that he's already very powerful and all that. One thing I will add, he's also very tricksy in terms of turning other people's powers against them. I remember one time he took, I think Deadbolt it was, the scream and all that. He used his scream by stabbing him to make him yell to like kill a Celestial. So he's good at turning people against each other.
Black Bolt.
Oh, Black Bolt, that's right, not Dead.
Yeah, Deadbolt is a really good rockabilly band, by the way. I met them a few times, Deadbolt.
Black Bolt, yeah, my apologies.
Yeah, I love Black Bolt. I've been trying to shoehorn him into a clobbering time. He's one of my favorite characters. I'd love that costume. It's so
Black
good.
Bolt?
Yeah, Black Bolt costume is so good.
Fantastic costume.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, Thanos is sneak. And now, here's the thing about Thanos. He defeats himself. He either has some sort of inferiority complex based on the fact that he was an outcast in the Eternals, but
he always defeats himself.
He always defeats himself. He would win if not for those pesky Eternals, which is himself.
Well, I mean,
those pesky kids.
Granted, it's a more recent, recent, I guess, relative to the old stuff, but there is a storyline in the main canon where he wins effectively. He gets everything he wants. He kills King Thor. He kills Silver Surfer, but he needs his self from the past to help him finish his plan, which is just subjugating the entire multiverse. And himself from the past didn't like that his future self downplayed him. So his past self killed his future self. So he negated his own plan.
I read anyway. That. Yeah. He also didn't like that his future self just sat around on a throne gloating. He's like, "This is what I do." Like,
which mini limited series is that?
It was the Thanos series.
Oh, the series. Yeah, I read some of the limited series.
It's where they introduced the Cosmic Ghost Rider.
The Alan Davis arc, the one versus the
that was really good. That was one of the last Marvel comics I actually bought.
Starlin doesn't get upset with their use of Thanos because, well, they own him. I mean, and seems like everybody does some of their best work writing him.
There's a couple of creations that bring out the best, like Swamp Thing. Something about Swamp Thing,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I was gonna say Adam Warlock, but I'm so ticked what they did to him in the movies. They took one of my favorite characters. So Logic Finest always has some great comments. Let's see what he has to say. Eternals were created by the Celestials, yes, and they were Infinity Gems, not stones. I'll never call them stones. The Infinity Gauntlet and the Infinity War. Okay, I agree with that.
Called gems first or stones first?
They were called gems. I'm saying stones.
I just remember what He's right. He's right. That's fine.
He is right. Absolutely. Did they say stones in the movies? Because they are Infinity Gems. They made a great game about Thanos collecting the Infinity Gems.
There's something about it on Wikipedia.
Yeah, I didn't like how I really wondered, did they change it for the movie, like for a message, or did they think Thanos was too scary for the general audience?
Well, they were the gems, as we know.
Thanos
it was definitely a gem when Warlock had his gem.
I think they changed Thanos for the movie just because he was a lot more brutal in the comics, especially the way he ended a lot of the superheroes.
I think they didn't want him to be having an affair with Death. I think that was a step too far for the movies, a little dark.
I don't know. They could have had Aubrey Plaza playing Death in the movie.
They could have had Aubrey Plaza play. Well, isn't she waiting to play I
think she's Death in the Agatha Harkness series. The Infinity Gems were retconned for the MCU films. Thanos was retconned and nerfed. Yes, they made him from one of the scariest legitimate threats in all of comic books to a goofball. Like a short-sighted goofball is the only way to describe him in the movies. Black Bolt versus
right. They called them stones in the movie.
Yeah, they both got Sonic-based scream powers. I think Black Bolt's scream is much more powerful. They start. Okay, he's already clobbering time. Thanos may be scary in the comics, but he's still humiliated by Deadpool. Well, that's stupid. Deadpool sucks.
There's so much stuff as Deadpool that he's done this and killed them all in the universe.
Well,
Some of
I
that
don't
stuff
think
is
that's
not
what
quite
he's referring to.
continuity.
I think he's mentioning that Deadpool got with, the personification of death, whereas Thanos didn't.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yeah.
I'll say this: take Deadpool, chain him up, throw him in the ocean. He dies.
Hey, don't you
he-
dare! I have a drawing of Deadpool.
There you go. Well, anybody who regenerates, you keep them submerged in the ocean for.
I'm not a fan of Deadpool, but we did this drawing for the studio, and if I sell any of them, and which are all for sale, I got to put it on Bristol. So I kind of like the layout and I like the Juggernaut. So it is what it is. We're drawing Ripclaw tomorrow.
Well, Death was always just like a skeleton. If you found that sexy, Luniverse,
Well,
then
the thing is, they had her in the robes, and she looked pretty sexy in the robes as they draw superhero women, especially in the 70s and 80s. But then if you looked at her face, it would be the skeleton face. Yeah.
the comic, the MC Thanos. The MC Thanos was lame. The Deadpool stuff was right. Modern Marvelism for me. I'm with you.
In retrospect, he's lame. He ended up to be lame. He didn't start lame. Like we didn't think that was going to happen, but they kind of pushed it out.
All the cool characters were nerfed and emasculated in the MC. Yeah, like what they did to the Hulk. Yeah, I got a friend who's such a Hulk fan, and he's like still livid of.
No, that was bad.
I was more annoyed at what they did to Thor.
Well, yeah, but Thor could come back from that. And Thor originally was a drunk guy anyway. I'm more angry that they had a girl boss become king of Asgard.
Right, a coward who left became an alcoholic for 2 centuries or 2,000 years, and then she's more qualified than like Heimdall or anybody else to become the king. It's so bad. It's so forced. Like Deadpool's jokes and fourth wall breaking was very toned down before the video game. Yeah, I don't. Sorry, Rob Liefeld. I don't like you.
Well, Rob didn't. The annoying part of Deadpool is not what Rob created. Fabian created that part. Rob created the costume and the fact that he's a mercenary and was a smart aleck like Spider-Man. But the breaking the breaking of the fourth wall and the personality that the movies use is not a Rob Liefeld collection. Don't tell him; he'll get really mad.
Right, I'm with Eric Darksied for the win. The only character that's allowed to break the fourth wall, as far as I'm concerned, is the Watcher.
You know who else can break the fourth wall? Stippling Vaughn.
Walls do not contain him. He's not contained by fourth walls, fifth walls, or even 18th walls. He will not be contained. So, who notable stories? Obviously, the Infinity Gauntlet. I'm going to say the Avengers Annual 9, and then Marvel 2-in-1 10. Two of the greatest.
Marvel 2-in-1. They're both. Ironically, is Marvel 2-in-1 Annual 7 and Avengers Annual, I think, 7.
Yeah,
those are terrific.
No, it's Marvel. It's Marvel 2-in-1 Annual 2.
Oh, okay.
And I think it's Avengers Annual 8 or 9.
Whatever. They came out like within weeks.
The Rogue One. But anyway, those two comics makes one fabulous story that is one of the greatest comics that,
Almost every story Thanos is in, especially the ones that Starlin wrote, is an event.
I will say this. I went to an Indian supermarket and I got a bag of these. They told me they were like, Indian potato chips. And I will just say that the stench that is now coming out of my body is you're glad that you guys are on camera and not in my house. So I'll leave it at that.
Now I feel bad for your wife. What can we do to save her?
She just said, as you should. But anyway, does anybody have any other great Thanos story? Like, to me, those are just the two best Thanos stories. I do like that story in the Thanos series that Zark just brought up.
I like the story that that Starlin did with Alan Davis.
Yeah, Alan Davis drew a scary Thanos face. I remember. Yeah,
and then the one he drew with Andy Smith thinking the Hulk when he was Hulk. They were always good. And the ones that you're saying are even higher than those ones. Thanos is rarely in a bad story. That's kind of my point.
I mean, I remember I had one that popped into my head. It's not really relevant to how powerful he is, but just I guess how evil he is. There was a storyline where he just picked a random human guy, and then every time his birthday would roll around, he would do some terrible atrocity to him. Like he'd kill his entire family, or he would make sure he was framed for something, get him imprisoned, just every year after year, for no real reason.
Yeah.
Well, he created Moondragon in a way, and the Drax the Destroyer by just deciding that they should be in a car accident.
Yeah. And then the Eternals rescued him. That's right. Comic book Drax the Destroyer is Arthur Douglas, a human.
Arthur Douglas, the Destroyer.
The father of Heather Douglas, Moondragon. Unfortunately, Arthur's wife died in the car accident. They couldn't do anything about that, but they turned Drax into like basically a bionic monster whose sole purpose is to kill Thanos.
That's right.
Flying around with those armbands.
And he was almost Hulk strength as well. He was brutally strong.
And he could fly. He had
that really silly costume.
Yeah, he had energy projection and everything. I love the original Drax.
One of the few times where I can't get too mad at the movies, because the Drax in the movies did kind of have his heart, maybe if not his looks,
Not only is it true, it's super truth lot. The anti-life equation gives mental control. Okay, we'll get to Darksied in a minute. Got a super chat all the way from the Shire. Just so you know, the super chat money that you send me, it goes to buying potatoes and sausages, and only potatoes and sausages. So there you go. Helping
bangers and mash.
Can't join you today. MCU Thanos was a great villain, but DC animated Darksied, the DC animated Darksied was awesome. Yes, I agree.
Oh yeah, that was great.
Comics wise, I vote Darksied. Thanos has plans, but Darksied.
See if that's on. I want to watch Justice League again.
I can't really argue. This just jumped. Cosmic Ghost Rider had his moments.
Luniverse has a question.
I heard Mantis was a human Vietnamese. Yes, I was just talking about that today. The original comic book Mantis was it a Starling creation, or was it an Englehart?
Englehart in the Avengers. Englehart loved Mantis as a character so much that he brought a Mantis version to every comic company he worked with.
Yes, he made a DC version.
Mantis was just ridiculous. Talk about girl boss. It's 1972, and she's beating the crap out of Iron Man and Thor by just going hi-ya.
Right. The original Mantis, if I remember correctly, her mother was a Vietnamese prostitute, and her father was like a soldier in Vietnam.
She was a prostitute until they cleaned her up a little bit.
Right, and she was a prostitute. Like today's, they would say that she's autistic, but she talks weird.
She talks in the third person. She was I have to say, at the end of her Avengers run, she was in the 70s. She was, and I read all them originally. She was a little annoying.
Yeah, she was very annoying.
As a young kid, I was like, "What the heck is
her and Moondragon were the two."
Well, she married a tree.
Yeah, but that was it. She was
destined. That's an interesting choice.
Yeah, she was destined to become the Celestial Madonna, meaning that her child was going to be like the most powerful being in the universe, and they never really followed up with that, as far as I know. But she fell in love with the swordsman, and then the swordsman died. And an alien Coatl, who is like a tree alien from Hala. The Kree have two races.
I think the Coatl is what the Phoenix killed.
I just remember that the Kree have the human-looking Kree, and they also have these plant beings. And the
plant beings.
Two dominant species or whatever. And one of them sent his like mental spirit into the dead body of the swordsman, and they went off to go create the Celestial Madonna, and then she was gone for the longest time. I don't know if she ever came back with her child. I got to look that up.
I don't think so. She came back in the Silver Surfer series with by Englehart and Rogers, because only Englehart wanted to write her. So
yeah, because she was a weird, annoying fringe character, but she was fully human, and just her hair stuck up.
Yeah, no, she didn't. She wasn't as alien as she had.
She did martial arts. She was like the ultimate martial artist with the potential for the supreme being. Thanos would make. Darkseid would make Thanos snap himself out.
That was so funny. That was just some complicated Avengers books. I'll tell
you. Go to work there, RR. Is it wrong to have been attracted to Moonshadow? You mean Moondragon? No, because there was something about Moondragon that I liked.
Because she wore almost nothing almost the whole time. And the style of the 70s and 80s was to draw everybody hot. So not like image hot, but like just hot.
You know, it's funny because I found her hot, and I found the bald chick in the first Star Trek movie to be hot.
Right, yeah. But
that had the
you ever see the scene where the thing spanks her?
Yep.
In Marvel 2-in-1. I think you're coming up to that issue soon.
Zart, Marcus, do you remember what Moondragon's original code name was?
Yeah.
Oh no,
Madam McEvil.
Madam McEvil.
MacEvil.
Madam McEvil, and they were like,
evil.
yeah, they changed it to Moondragon.
Yeah, she was supposed to be an evil villainess, and then she ended up not to be a villainess, but she was a snotty character. They wrote her. She would be like, Thor, why are you hanging out with these humans? Why aren't you're a god? What's the matter with you?
And then
she got so annoying. The thing gave her a spanking in the comic.
Right. and then Peter David,
the old school comic comedy.
Peter David turned her into a lesbian with the female Captain Marvel. Yeah.
Oh, did he? Well, that figures.
Yeah.
That was not one of Peter's better days.
It's just more like comparing the memes that you can make with it compared to the modern characters, anyway.
You're going to come if I think that's part of what you were going to come up in Marvel 2-in-1, John, at some point. That story.
Back to my corner, gents. Great conversation. Remember, Kirby made the New Gods of the Eternals. They're basically the same. Yes, Kirby left Marvel over a disagreement with Stan. He went to DC and he created the New Gods. The New Gods were biblical, meaning it was heaven and hell and angels and things like that. And then when he went back to DC, he pretty much continued the same themes, but he created the Eternals, which were mythological. Now, little bit of I never really liked the New Gods too much. I'm actually reading the original Kirby ones for the first time, so I'm starting to like them. I've always read other people talking about the New Gods, but the names like Randy Goodness.
The New Gods, I did the same way. First off, for somebody they didn't come out in order.
Right.
So New Gods 1 came out after, and the New Gods and Thanos was introduced. Now we're getting to Thanos in the Jimmy Olsen comic because Kirby said, "Give me your comic that's not selling good. I'm going to make it a big seller."
Well, the legend was, I don't want to put anybody out of work, so give me something that was going to get canceled anyway.
Right, and I'm going to make it into a big seller because he's Kirby. That's why Vin Colletta didn't get fired because he didn't want to put Vin out of work either.
Right. It's funny because the first appearance of Darksied has Don Rickles on the cover.
That's right.
Yeah.
So the whole saga starts in Jimmy Olsen and then the Forever People, and nobody bought that. They bought the New Gods. And so it ends up, since it doesn't come out in order or have chapter numbers, because the reading order is not as it came out. So people got jumbled up and confused.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And Kirby doesn't plot things out. He just goes from his imagination. The way he worked was he just did it. He had an idea. It wasn't written down. And so characters would be created, characters would be forgotten, costumes would change because he was such an explosion of imagination. And you couldn't stop it.
Darksied is such a great villain. Yeah, Darksied is
excellent villain.
I was talking earlier today with Adam Lawson, and he said that the Joker is DC's greatest villain. Now I'm starting to think it's probably Darksied. DC
was light on because of the way they are. Well, you read a lot of the Bronze, Silver Age. DC was light on villains because everybody was so silly or not really dangerous. They had great rogues galleries, but not great villains. And so Darksied is needed and used to this day because they don't have anybody else.
Well, him and Professor Zoom were some of the Reverse Flashes.
Right. But Reverse Flash wasn't really turned to really. None of the Flash people were super evil until Reverse Flash, in the 80s, which oddly enough, like Iris West is killed in a panel this big. You think it'd be this big thing, but it's this little panel that Don Heck drew.
Logic says, I thought Kirby made the New Gods for Marvel, but Stan hated it, so Kirby left and made the New Gods.
I don't think anything Kirby could do that Stan hated, but Stan didn't want to cancel Thor. So,
I don't know this for a fact. I guess just to get your insight on it. I'm not super into the New Gods, but do you think DC went heavy into them because the Norse and Greek mythology were so big in Marvel, they didn't want to use them, so they went harder into the New Gods?
That's a good observation.
I don't know. Perez brought the Pantheon to Wonder Woman, though, when he restarted after Crisis.
Darksiid is
probably.
I would not put the Joker in the top 5. Eric, now I got to ask you to list what your top 5 would be.
I think Two-Face is a better villain than the Joker.
I'm so tired of the Joker.
You know, it's so funny that they didn't use him for years. You know, before Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil brought him back. You know, and made him a villain, a serial killer.
You don't like Granny Goodness or Stompa?
I do like.
Greek gods were big in Wonder Woman. Yeah, when George Perez brought back Wonder Woman, he was big. He leaned heavily into the Greek gods. The Greek gods were big in the Teen Titans even before that. You know, and
well, yeah, it was cool to see the Greek gods in action in the DC universe, but in comparison to Marvel, where Zeus and Odin, being Skyfathers, actively interacted with superheroes, it is a difference between the two.
Yeah. Two-Face is really a personal villain for Batman.
Yeah.
I prefer Riddler over Joker. I know that if the magic beings gave me, John, you're going to write Batman, I would not use the Riddler. I think the Riddler is probably the toughest villain to write. You got to come up with all these riddles and mysteries. I wouldn't touch that with a 10.
It's a difficult, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the Joker, you could do anything.
The other big, great DC villain now is Bane, right?
Yeah, I don't like Bane. He just looks silly to me, and I can't get past that. He looks like a luchador.
Well, he's supposed to look like a luchador,
right? But if they made a luchador villain, I would like it. You know, I kind of like the luchador look. You know, I was talking to Oscar about making a luchador based villain, and he was
that'd be cool.
He was like, "You're too much."
I see your point.
Yeah.
About the luchador. Yeah, you want a luchador based hero, you know.
Highfather versus Zuros. The Riddler is also overused.
Yeah, everything's overused.
The Calabac and the Power. Yeah, Calabac is pretty cool.
Calabac is really cool.
One thing I always thought was funny: the voice of Granny Goodness was Ed Asner.
That's funny.
You may know better than I do in this regard, but are the Eternals comparable to the Skyfathers in Marvel? Because I mean, I would compare the new gods like Darksied to like Odin and Zeus as opposed to the Eternals.
Good question. That to me is the big problem with the Eternals in Marvel is like they overlap with the Greek gods. Like if you wanted to have okay, I got no problem putting the Eternals in Marvel Comics, but then they should be the Greek gods. Like Zeus should be a mistranslation of Zuros. You know what I mean? Athena should be Athena should be you know what I mean? Like, but now that they have both, like how did they just happen to arise? The same pantheon, the names that are slightly similar, they overlap.
Yeah, right, exactly.
It always bothered me.
Circe is the same name.
Yeah, well, Circe is supposed to be Circe. Is supposed to be Circe. Like there's
right, but it's virtually the same name. It's not even
Zuros. Like how do you rectify that? It bothers me.
Nothing Kirby did when he came back to Marvel was in the Marvel universe.
Right,
Captain America, like I was reading it when I was a kid. I'm like, I liked it because I always liked Kirby, but he's not. What happened to everybody else? You know, all of a sudden he's a different character. Now older, it's really fun, but. Read Black Panther. I mean, that thing's that's wild. He had the three musketeers.
Bane is interesting stroke, but a slouch. Yeah, Bane is supposed to be like a master villain. Yeah, I just don't like him. I'm sorry, Grant. I'm sorry, Chuck. I'm your buddy, Chuck, but I don't like Bane. Bane looked cool in the Arthur games where he had the mask and tube, but has a leather jacket and he's huge.
Chuck doesn't like Johnny Quest, so there you
go. I know. That hurt.
Like, what? Are you kidding me?
Doc Savage first Bane would be good. Batman doesn't have any really new villains that's stuck besides Quarterback. Well, he has the Signal Man, and what else does he need other than the Signal Man?
You know, I did not to defend the guys like the newer guys, but how hard is it to create unique villain that's a lasting villain for Batman or Spider-Man? Or Daredevil, like they've been around 60 years, more than 60 years, 70 years, 100 years. How hard is it's hard to create somebody that's like Bane, you don't like him, but he lasted all this time. It was like they created other villains that people don't really care.
Yeah.
The Penguin came back in the movie.
I hate the Penguin too.
You know,
Chuck Dixon said he created Captain Fear of the hopes of him becoming like a major Batman villain. And,
I like that story. That was a fun story.
And he said Denny O'Neil hated him. That he only has
I know. Denny O'Neil didn't like Mr. Freeze either.
Yeah, well, Mr. Freeze was too sci-fi for Batman.
I guess, but again, you know, what are you going to do? I mean, so much of Batman in the 50s and early 60s was just like one-off villains, one-off stories.
Well, not just that, but I mean, they've been around so long, and now that they've basically fused all the past continuities in DC, you have to try and, I guess, explain at this point with Batman having a massive team of super-powered heroes. How are all these low-level street villains not locked up or beaten at this point?
Yeah. I remember he had Blockbuster. That was a good one.
Yeah.
In the 60s, Carmine.
I take back. I like when the Penguin is like portrayed the way he was portrayed in the most recent Batman movie.
That's a Chuck Graham thing too, though.
You know, when he's like this information broker that runs a nightclub and everything like that. Like I hate the whole umbrella, rah, 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 like the Burgess Meredith Penguin. As much as I love that TV series,
that has its place, but you're right.
Right. So I take it back. I this the old original Penguin who fires umbrellas at people. I didn't like that, but I do like the Riddler. I think the Riddler is actually really cool. I'm trying to think. I love Catwoman. I think Catwoman is just a great. I do like the Joker, but I'm just so sick of. I'm
not. The whole Catwoman. They've taken the Catwoman love affair with Batman a step far. I mean, They almost got him married. At least they would have done that, and then they pulled back on that. And that was Lee Weeks' work, so I did read some of that.
It should have been
and that she's a villain. She's a villain. She's not a killer, but she's a villain.
Well, how would this? Have you read the Batman Catwoman war that happened not too long ago?
No, I did not.
It was. She somehow managed to convince the entirety of the Bat family, like Robin, Batgirl, even the extended family, to turn against Batman, to form a crime syndicate in Gotham to reform crime, but just basically forms a giant thieves guild. And they turn Batman into an enemy up until the end. And then at the very end, Batman apologizes to Catwoman, despite her basically making criminal organizations.
Oh, that's why we can't have Catwoman.
If I was to write the story where Catwoman and Batman almost get married, this is my rewrite. Everything is the same. She's, they've fallen for each other. She gets to the altar. And then during the wedding, a woman shows up. They reveal, and it's not her. What is she doing? She's robbing the Batcave. She's robbing I like that. The whole thing is a setup so that she could be. It was a heist all along.
That would make sense.
And Batman fell for it, and that's it. And then she goes back, and it says, "See you, sucker." And Bruce Wayne is broke.
She does that basically in the story I just mentioned. A way that she gets to counter Batman to turn everyone against them is at this point they're already in a relationship. She sells Wayne Manor to Ra's al Ghul, I think it was.
Oh, Ra's al Ghul, that's a good thing.
Takes all the funding and then bounces.
I just think that how could I'm a dope. How could I think of that story? Catwoman is the
because you're not running Catwoman as your mommy wife.
Right. That would have been the ultimate con. You know what I mean? And then Batman is broke. He has to almost be like the Punisher. He's living out of a car for a little bit until he gets his money back. But he's Batman. He's going to get, but that would have been a great, it kind of would have been to me.
That's cool. I like that.
It would have been the Born Again, where
that would have been something like Chuck would have done something like that.
You know what I mean? Where Matt Murdock has to become a fry cook and start all over again. Yeah. I think that would have been a great story, but what do I know? What do I know? I just write Heroic Tales, which is available on Fund My Comic now. Come on, guys.
Well, let's put it in. Hold on. Drop the link. If you guys, we'll get a ban. I'm going to have to time everybody out if they don't buy this comic. Do you like that one?
If you like me,
I'm supposed to work with John, and he's got to have the money to keep going at least 6 issues so we can work together.
I like Zaz. There's a lot of good Batman. I like Professor Strange.
I like Professor Strange. Yeah,
there's a lot of good Batman villains. Batman would bound, Bat Stonks, Dr. Hugo Strange, yep.
Tweedledum.
The Wraith that they never bring. I hate the Mad Hatter. That's.
Well,
Oh, thank you, Eric Guapo. That would be better. There you go.
You have to at the time some of these.
The Crime Doctor is an awesome villain.
That's a great name. You always talk about name. Crime Doctor is a great name for a comic villain.
Yes. So I ripped off the Crime Doctor in my role-playing games. I have a Crime Doctor villain. He's called Triage, but that's
Oh,
not
I like that. Yeah, that's a good name.
But that's not necessarily an evil. I've been
Darren
racking my mind to come up with an evil doctor, but I love that whole.
Wagner.
I love the idea of the villains have to have their own ecosystem, like you'll find out. I'm spoiled that in Heroic Tales, the bad guys have like a whole support system. There's like an evil oracle that gives that assigns jobs to people, or like you know what I mean. There's underground, not under the ground, but maybe underground doctors that they go to and things like that. I love like there has to be like an ecology to support these supervillains in a superhero world. Deadshot's a good one. Deadshot's a good villain.
That's a Batman villain, yeah.
The Mad Hatter and Tweed. I don't like them. I love the ventriloquist.
That was created in the 80s.
Oh my God. Somebody said this and I can't stop thinking about it. Paul Giamatti as the ventriloquist.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's great.
Oh my God. Wouldn't that be great? Paul Giamatti as the ventriloquist. You know, super late. How you doing?
Know
Deadshot
this has been done in comics or not.
Mark, let's start talk.
Sure.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I don't know if this has been done in the comics or not, but in the animated series, like The Batman, it was one later on. They had a character called Dave, and it was an artificial intelligence, and its whole shtick was that it could analyze each supervillain and then adapt their best qualities, and then eventually it locks onto Batman and kind of sees him as a supervillain and starts taking up his qualities. So when Batman tries to stop him, he just counters him at every turn.
Where was this? In a comic?
No, this was an animation. It's just called The Batman. It's
I remember that. I remember that. I watched The Batman. That was good. That was good.
Omnipro says John oozes New Yorker. I got to know, is that good or is that bad?
Bad. It's always bad. New York.
Elaborate, because I'm pretty down on New York these days. Scarecrow's a great villain. Scarecrow is an absolutely great villain. That makes sense. Minions are subcontractors that change costumes pretending on my mouth.
My favorite thing is the Taskmaster used to have to teach them.
That was his operation. You went to him when you needed henchmen. He wasn't the guy that brought the Avengers. He was the guy that you hired. He was like the union leader of the henchmen.
Granted, the stuff they've done recently with Taskmaster wasn't too good in the movies, but there was a comic involving him and Deadpool. I remember that I don't normally read Deadpool comics, but this one I found interesting. It was where Deadpool stopped being crazy, and kind of snapped into a hyper reality. He still had where he sees things that he's a comic, breaks the fourth wall, but it drove him, instead of crazy, he just became more sociopathic. And he goes against Taskmaster, and Taskmaster has similar abilities to adapt and kind of has this similar power and can look into his mind. And it was interesting to see him trying to adapt to someone like that. I know it doesn't not involve in the current debate, but
yeah, we're allowed to go off on tangents. It's fun. We're talking comics. Old Dirty Fatty says, like the Venture Brothers with the Guild of Calamitous Intent. Yeah, my network for that sport. I have to say, I love the Venture Brothers. Oh my God, do I love that?
I like the Venture Brothers too.
Modern cartoon, but I get mad at it because do you know how many villains and ideas I had to throw out that I can never put into heroic? I had a bad guy called the Red Death. I had just a lot of support characters. I believe it or not, there's a lot of David Bowie references that I'm throwing out because the Venture Brothers are all full of David Bowie references.
They are. That's right.
Makes sense though, because I think I'm the same exact age as those guys. So we all grew up watching and reading the same stuff. So my voice makes me a New Yorker. The funny thing that you said that is when I was in Albuquerque, I got off the train and I had to hitchhike because I had $12 in my pocket, so I had to hitchhike to the college from the train station. And the first person to pick me up went, New York? As soon as I said hello. New York's all right if you like saxophones. Is perhaps one of the top 5 songs of all time. That's great. Here's the link if anybody wants to pop in and make fun of my New Yorker voice.
I love the Venture Brothers take on Doctor Strange.
Yes. I love the Venture Brothers. Guys, I recommend the Venture Brothers. Watch it in order. It pays off. My favorite season of the Venture Brothers is the whole Blue Morpho story. That is so good. It's a goof on the Green Hornet. Remember when the Taskmaster was a smart butt, you would quip like Spider-Man, but they were.
I'll never forget that cover that Perez did with the Taskmaster.
Don't tell me Brick Frog. What does that mean? Don't tell me you had Brick Frog. I don't know what that means. I had Brick Frog.
We have enough frogs in we don't need any more frog characters.
All right, so I'm going to take down Thanos right now, and I'm going to put up Darksied.
We didn't really even talk about Darksied. We talked about everything else.
Yeah, but
that's the best episode, so that's fun.
I enjoy when we go off on tangent. So here's Darksied. Zart, do you want to talk about Darksied since Marcus talked about Thanos?
Yeah, sure. He is a Skyfather level character. He is the mastermind behind multiple crisis events. He has a real desire to have the anti-life equation, or to control everything, destroy everything. And it really just depends on the comic, but I know he's effortlessly beat characters like Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, trivially so. I mean, quite a few stories around him.
Yeah, he is. If Skyfather is supposed to be God, Darksied is supposed to be the devil. Now, here's the controversy. How do you pronounce it? Is it Darksied or is it Darkside? Or is it Darkshe? You know,
I've always heard it as Darksied.
I've always said Darkside too.
It's Darkside. Wait, Kirby said it was Darkside.
Right. Oh, yeah, Brick. Oh, didn't Darksied just protect himself to the third? Yeah. This is actually new. After I stopped reading DC, they started saying that Darksied is beyond a physical body, and all of these stone.
Yeah, I read about that. I don't know.
It was that for one story, but they retconned it. He's more. They combined him. You know, the old school Anti-Monitor, kind of what he was, the multiversal threat. They effectively made him that. And a more recent story that had him fight the actual Anti-Monitor from that period and was going toe to toe with him. So that's his new status.
Okay, yeah, Brick Frog was a minor villain in the Guild of Calamitous Intent. No, I did not have a Brick Frog character. No, I did not. But Brick Frog is funny. Doesn't Darksied just protect? Oh yeah, I already said that. Darksied, yes. Darksied, whenever he shows up, I kind of get scared there, and then I get scared of Thanos. But yeah, Darksied is scary. Now, I'll address all the comments, and then I'll talk. Didn't the Source Wall come from the New Gods? Yes. The Source Wall was this immense hyperdimensional wall that separated our space from basically God. The Source is the source of everything. So it's basically God. And Thanos was always trying to break through that wall, basically to invade God, invade heaven or whatever. And in some of the stories, he actually died. Like if
Thanos or Darksied?
Oh, Darksied. It's the wrong name. Thank you.
I mean, it could will be either at this point.
I think he became part of the wall and Simon.
Right. At one point, he collided with the wall, and the Promethean giants were these beings who tried to break into the wall. But if he could just project a new body, it kind of makes sense why he keeps coming back. And then he was always there was always Metron, and Metron is Metatron. Metatron being the viceroy of heaven, God, the voice of God, the second in command of all the cosmos. He was always talking to Darksied. Then you see him talking to Highfather. I just love all that stuff. I always loved Metron. It got me fascinated with Metatron. Darksied is just evil. He's a god like a dictator. Yes, I will say that for Dungeons and Dragons, I will say that Darksied is lawful evil, and I'll say that Thanos is neutral evil. He's not chaotic evil. Chaotic evil you can't really plan. You just react. I'd say the Magus is chaotic evil, but Darksied, Thanos is neutral, meaning he's just a greedy evil for himself kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say Darkside's lawful evil. I mean, his interaction with Batman has pretty much solidified that for me. When he was trying to gamble for the fate of Apocalypse.
Yeah, and plus he had a whole planet that he ruled with an iron fist. And you didn't. You enforced rule.
Basically, forged in fire.
Yep. The comments are going really good today. Sinestro is another great villain. I like Sinestro. I do like Sinestro. I like that. It means left hand, and left hand has always been the sinister means left-handed. It's just
I'm left-handed.
Yeah, you see, left-handed.
I write with my right hand, but I do everything else left-handed.
Darksied parademons are just prisoners from various planets, just tortured and brainwashed into working. Oh, if that's true, that is awesome. I didn't know that.
I don't think Kirby thought of that. That's a good one though.
But that's really good. That reminds me of Tolkien, where the orcs were just twisted, tortured elves, corrupted by Morgoth's evil. That's actually really scary now that you made me think about it. Thanks is badass, but he doesn't beat Darkseid. You mean Thanos? Yes. Darkseid design inspires really. Yes, and it's like Marcus said, the first appearance of Thanos, he had like normal human proportions, but I think they buffed him up to make him.
Oh yeah, he definitely bumped him up.
Yeah. The Omega beams. Let's talk about the Omega beams. And Marcus, you want to talk about the Omega beams?
The Omega beams can follow you anywhere, and they don't always kill you. They think they zap you into a place where you don't want to be. You know.
Yeah. And I mean, they can do
back to Apocalypse. Sometimes they kill you, and you can't avoid them. It's impossible. Once he starts his Omega beams, they zip all over the place, and they follow you anywhere.
Well, right. I will note there was one exception where the Flash managed to do it, and it actually impressed Darkseid.
Well, the Flash has gotten so powerful. He's basically a god now, anyway.
Right. So the Darkseid's Omega beams, if I remember originally, they erased you from existence. If you got hit by the Omega beams, you were gone. It was like no different than the Ultimate Nullifier. But one of the things about Ultimate powers is they always nerf them, because once they say like, oh, this is the ultimate power, you know you're never going to connect with it. Like, okay, if you get hit by Darkseid's Omega beams, doesn't matter if you're Superman, you're gone. So what does it mean? It means they never connect. It kind of makes them less dangerous. So they kind of toned them down a little bit, so Superman could get hit with them and blast them.
Yeah, they had to tone them down, because I think one of the Forever people got hit by him, if I remember. I don't know if you're up to that part.
I'd love I'm at the way beginning. I'm still at the Jimmy Olsen's pal.
I think
order will make it easier.
Originally it was just you were gone if you got hit by them, but it kind of makes them worse in a way. It made it to where the Omega beams can do a lot of different things. Like it can hit you like a laser, it can act like a disintegration beam. It can also do strange things like remove your skin or target very specific parts of you and destroy it. So it kind of uses it as a form of torture as well, sending you to other dimensions, all that.
Yeah, they become the plot beam.
Yeah, basically.
I like that like a few times that Darkseid got defeated. Like one time, like you said, Flash ran, which I think is a clever use of Flash's power. One time he fired the beams at Superman. Superman did this convoluted path and then grabbed Darkseid and pulled Darkseid.
I remember that. Yeah,
that was clever.
I like how in the animated series, Darkseid became a Superman villain. He was not a Superman villain previously. And that was good, because it's hard to come up with Superman villains.
Yeah, well, I think I could be wrong, but I remember in the comics, originally the one time Superman went against him, it was just to show how powerful Darkseid was, that Superman hit him as hard as he could and it really didn't do much.
Right, it knocked out all the windows and buildings.
Superman was part of New God saga early on, because he obviously was in Jimmy Olsen, and then he was in Jimmy Olsen meets the Forever People, and he's kind of in the Forever People, and then he kind of and then unfortunately for Jack, they put Al Plastino heads on him because he didn't like the way Jack draws. I like the way Jack draws Superman, but I think it wasn't corporate Superman.
Well, I'm sure it's never been said like this, but you know how Thor was originally created to be the hard counter for the Hulk? I think Darkseid was kind of set up to be the hard counter for Superman, that, no matter how beefy Kryptonians got, you should put Darkseid in front of him. It's not going to go too well.
The interesting thing, if you read it, and when John will, being a Superman fan, Superman leans in those comics with his Krypton aliens. He goes, this is Supertown. I can live here and I don't have to hide and be Clark Kent. It's very interesting, that Kirby's take on Superman.
I like what Zach Tan says. I left this comment up for a while. The Omega beams are cool in concept, but comic laws of physics dictate the more lethal a weapon is, the less likely it is to hit. Absolutely.
Zach Tan's read a lot of comic books.
That's the problem. Like, you know they're never going to use the Ultimate Nullifier. There was this, like Odin's not going to use the Odin sword. There was a story where Darkseid's Omega beams tracked down Clark Kent and teleported him to Apocalypse. It was a fun story. Superman became brainwashed and was used to call rebellion on Apocalypse. Who wore a gladiator outfit? The pilot.
Oh, yeah. I think that was in the 80s, right? That run.
Darkseid is so intimidating. Many times he doesn't. Yeah, he's like Superman level strength. Darkseid's the perfect villain for
Superman level strength. Yeah.
And don't worry, guys. I have like a Thanos Darkseid villain in Heroic Tales, but the team's got to form first. You know, I'm trying to follow.
Which means if you want to see that villain, you have to back Heroic Tales #2.
Right, and because I kind of want to reveal him in Heroic Tales #10.
I'll hard sell your comic, John.
Yeah, thank you. Don't forget about Darkseid's agony matrix. Imagine the worst pain and multiplied by Darkseid has this like his sidekick, the Toady character, Darksied. You know,
Darksied, he was bad.
He just likes to torture people.
Darksied was one of his better sidekicks.
Darksied is oh my god, is that a creep? Oh my god, so much better than Granny Goodness. Although I like the concept of Granny Goodness. The idea of Granny Goodness is absolutely terrifying. But I just can't get past the name Granny Goodness.
All the Kirby names, a lot of the Kirby names are silly, which is why Kirby was deemed, and this is good, especially at Marvel, out of date. You know, nobody was naming characters like that anymore. But they all had that key role of nastiness for Darkseid.
Yeah,
the female Furies. I mean, that's a silly name. The Black Racer.
Yeah.
You know, like the Black Racer, really?
Yeah.
Black Racer. You know.
Oh, well, they tried to fix it by like fusing him with the aspect of death. It didn't really work though.
They can't. Yeah, but that's why in the 70s, Kirby's they were left on his own to do that. And then by the time he got to the Marvel, the people in the office and fans were like, "This is old fashioned. We want Bernie Wright's into Jim Starlin, Neil Adams, and the burgeoning Dave Cockrum and John Byrne, which all were based on. They all loved Kirby, but they were a little more modern. The modern writing was more complicated by then.
I mean, at this point, I didn't like Kirby. You know, when this stuff.
I always liked him, but that's because I read all those Fantastic Four reprints you were talking about the other day with RJ.
Once Marvel became John Buscema, Kirby was old fashioned.
That's right. Right. Now, John
I got the Eternals when it came out because I don't know. It worked because it wasn't part of Marvel. You know.
Right. Well, all of Kirby stuff worked when it wasn't part of Marvel.
What did the
thing work? You know.
So, in the New God story, they hinted at the death of Darkseid. You know, and then they got to when Kirby left, they didn't touch Darkseid for like 10 years or so. And then in the Legion of Superheroes, which is 1,000 years in the future, they had the Great Darkness Saga. And they were telling you from day one who the bad guy was, but you just didn't think of it. You know,
he was that. Yeah.
You know, the Great Darkness Saga. And this being was like, it brainwashed the entire planet of Daxam. So he had 1,000 million Supermans flying around the universe. They literally carved the planet into the shape of Darkseid's head, and then
reread that.
And then all of like his minions, but they were like cracked shadow, like Orion and all of these people were just destroying everything. And then Darkseid reveals himself, and it was a shock. And he's saying, you know, I was killed, but it took me 1,000 years to regenerate and come back. And then and one of the things I loved was Saturn Girl immediately mind probes him. And she screams, and they physically pull her back, and she's like, "It was like reading a black hole. I read his mind, and then his mind just slurped me in, and I couldn't escape." I thought that was so freaking cool. And then
I really like when they do that sort of stuff in comics.
I'm sorry?
Oh, I said, yeah, I really like when they do that sort of thing in comics. They did something similar with Thor.
Isn't that so cool? And then there was like 30 members of the Legion of Super. All of them shoot their signature beams, and Darkseid's just like. It's so good.
It makes him feel like more than just a villain. It really solidifies his, you know, he's a deity. He's not just a guy.
He's beyond, like, you need a team to take out Darkseid.
That was Paul Levitt Keith Giffen. Right?
Yep. And then they defeat him, and then Grant Morrison takes the JLA, and they tell us the untold story of how Darkseid dies. Do you remember that? Do you remember how they killed Darkseid?
I didn't read that, so I don't remember that.
The atom shrinks down and goes.
Oh, yes, I do remember that.
Goes into Darkseid's brain and freaking grows and gives him a stroke. I thought that, I don't know.
That's pretty cool because that's about the only way you could do it, and it's a great use of the atom. I remember reading about. I didn't read those books. I couldn't get every book, you know, when I was buying those comics. I couldn't cut them all down.
One of the things I liked of the X-Men, Beast, Hank McCoy was talking. I forget who he was talking to, but he was talking about like Sentinels. He goes, they're going to make the Sentinels bigger and bigger and bigger. And every time we encounter these Sentinels, they're going to be tougher and tougher to fight. And then one day they're going to get really clever and make them small. And I always thought that was so like, microscopic Sentinels, nanite Sentinels. I don't know if they've explored that.
I don't know if they did that. That's a good idea.
Yeah,
I love the Sentinels.
If I remember right, they already have done that where they can as nanites, they can super adapt to mutant powers, so they can immediately snap and take and mimic your abilities. So if they're faced with one, they can copy. They can copy. I think anyone with the exception of Magneto.
He could probably flush that out of his system. So Glorious Godfrey, yeah, he was the.
Well, I think I think the Kirby villains. I don't think other than Big Barda became a hero with Mr. Miracle. I think that they can use unless the other villains can't be used in DC. It doesn't work, but the heroes work. The New God heroes work, but the villains don't work unless they're in New Gods. Unless you're John Byrne or Walt Simonson, you can't. It's very difficult to get a handle on those glorious, Granny Goodness, Glorious Godfrey, any of those. And they had at least two or three New Gods series that failed before Byrne started one, and then it became the Orion series with Simonson. And those were clearly good comics.
Did Calabac rule? Or did Darkseid have another son? I don't know the story that Zach Tad's referencing.
Well, his biological son's Orion.
Right. Oh, so Orion took over? Yeah, I forgot
Orion, that. The key to the New Gods.
That sounds familiar.
It was the swap of the sons.
Right. Yeah, Mr. Miracle is Highfather's son who was raised on Darkseid and still retained good. And then Orion, who was born on Apocalypse, lived in New Genesis and became good, meaning that good is more powerful than evil.
Well, he had to fight. He had to fight back the evil all the time, and that's why he was such an effective, as opposed to every other New God. He was the effective soldier. Marcus,
you went to SVA or did you go to
School of Visual Arts?
Yes. The New Gods is a tough sell, Stippling. I'm a big comic book guy, and even I just that's.
Well, it didn't end well either. They took Kirby off it before it could have an ending, and then he came back and did Hunger Dogs when I was in college,
right? And
that was kind of Metza ending. But Kirby had eye problems by then; it was hard for him to draw. But still, that really wasn't satisfying to anybody. But,
Caliban, named after a Shakespearean character, was the one in the X-Men. Don't care if it's popular opinion, but Darkseid looked cool in the sign. I didn't see it.
He did. I seen pictures of it. He did look cool.
Man of Steel was the last movie. I saw the Wonder Woman, but Man of Steel was the last one. They fundamentally got Superman wrong, so I didn't go.
I don't know if they get Superman right this time.
Yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed.
I wasn't crazy for that trailer. I'm not crazy for that guy as Superman. He doesn't do it for me.
Darkseid is cool. Stippling says, "Wait, Funky Flashman doesn't work in the DCU." Funky Flashman was Stan Lee.
That was not. Yeah, it's Funky Flashman and House Roy. That was not one of Kirby's better ideas to really rip upon his fellow creators like that. That was kind of not good.
Yep. Well, Darkseid is just awesome. He transcends the New Gods. Yeah.
I might be remembering this wrong. I don't know if it was in Brightest Day or something similar, but I remember that a lot of the members of the Justice League had to end up taking over the places of the New Gods. Like Hal Jordan had to become the God of Light. Batman had to take over Metatron's job. And they each kind of gain insights to their powers, how they work.
Oh, I don't know that story, but that sounds pretty cool.
I might have to look at that story. That's with Ivan Rice and Ethan Van Scott. That's good artwork.
I always liked Mr. Miracle too. I always liked his and Big Barda's relationship. They always seemed like, out of all of the superhero couples, they always seemed like the most normal, grounded, loving couple.
Except when Byrne put her in a porn with Superman.
Yeah.
That was
what?
What was he thinking?
Yeah, he made up a new member of Apocalypse. So there's another like evil god named Sleaze. It's Sleaze mind controlled Big Barda and Superman to make a porno movie.
Okay.
It didn't say porno movie in the comic, but if you have a certain
what
age,
it is, what it is.
Figure it out.
Yeah. Okay. I did not know that. Well, that's new information.
It's not a bad. It's a nice looking comic. It's really well drawn. It's a burn. You know.
Yeah, and John Byrne also had that issue where the paparazzi took pictures of She-Hulk naked.
Well, you also had the issue where in the Fantastic Four where Reed met Sue and Sue's like 12 and Reed's like looks like he's 42. And that's a Byrne trope too, the older man and younger girl.
That was a comic book trope. If you remember, it was the Wasp and Henry Pym too. He actually says when they met, wow, this teenage girl looks just like my dead wife.
Yeah, that's right. Well, to be fair, back then, in looking at the romance covers as well.
Oh, look at Humphrey Bogart.
The age of like 18, 19, wasn't like it is now. The whole idea, it's like, the young girl rock, she was just 17. You know what I mean?
Look at Humphrey Bogart married 19-year-old Lauren Bacall, right?
That's right. Or Elvis married 14-year-old Lisa.
Yeah, and so did what's his name?
Jerry Lee Lewis. That was his cousin.
Yeah, he married his 14-year-old cousin.
Yeah, but it wasn't great. But back then, like in rural America, and in they got married young, like where Dolly Parton's from in the mountains. They married young. They didn't wait.
I used to say I wish criminals were just as dumb as a cartoon, but now I can't stand dumb evil people. Yeah. So, we would talk about Darks. So, I brought up a couple of his stories. Obviously, his biggest enemies are everybody in the DC universe.
Yeah.
He started one of the greatest crossovers of all time, the X-Men Teen Titans crossover.
That's a great book. That was a great comic.
Drawn by Walt Simonson. So good. So good.
I was at a comic convention and they were promoting that, and there was Simonson and Claremont right next to each other, and you could ask him questions. And he had that picture of Darksied, that one in black. It was in black and white, and all I could say to him, "Wow, this is really scary." You're like, "It is, isn't it?" When I was like 14 years old.
Who do you think had more betrayals, the X-Men or the Teen Titans?
More betrayals?
Yeah, like internal betrayals.
Oh, I think I don't know the mod. I think the Teen Titans.
Betrayals with the B or portrayals with the P?
Betrayals, like Terra betraying the Teen Titans, as an example.
Well, that was such a big one that I'm trying to think.
That's a huge one, and it was so early in the run too.
Right, and it was so well done, and it was so creepy, and the fact that Terminator was being with her, and her being like she was supposed to be like 14 years old. And then they had the makeup on her, which made it look even creepier and trashy. Oh God!
Did she smoking the cigarette?
Yeah. And she had like the buck teeth, so she just looked like she looked like Christy McNichol or something like that.
Yeah, well,
God, it gives me the skeeves.
Well, you're thinking that because I think it came out around the same time as that movie with Christy McNichol and Matt Dillon.
Yeah, what Little Darlings or something?
Little Darlings. I went to elementary school with Matt Dillon through high school.
I'm surprised they did it in the Titans. They actually put the accurate depiction of Terra in the further Titan show. They didn't do it in the original Teen Titans, but they actually did show it later on.
I still can't like Darksied because of that. And now people kind of want him to be not Darksied, Deathstroke.
Oh, Deathstroke's a villain.
Yeah, he's a villain, and that's why Emma Frost will never be a hero. She was.
Well, you saw what I posted today.
He was.
With Dave Break, I said, "Well,
oh God, I hate that character." What's worse is because Marvel Rivals is so big and she's a new character in it, she got super popular and no one understands. Well, every comic book reader hates her. Well, I can't say every comic book reader, but a lot.
No, the newbies love her. The old she was a second
villain. You don't hate you don't have to. You could like her as a villain, but she's a villain.
She's a great character.
Yeah, that's not what I mean. I don't mean she's a bad character, but in terms of liking her.
Yeah, she's a great character in the fact that she's a villain. Just like
Yeah,
she did bad things. She's a horrible person. You know, the whole Hellfire Club was
Hellfire Club was really evil.
Yeah, they were a sex trafficking organization. Look what they did to poor Jean Grey. They captured a man and then mind controlled her to sexually mutilate that man.
The current people who do the comics, particularly X-Men, don't really understand what bad people are, good people and bad. Everybody's neutral. Everybody's like, well, or they're having coffee at Starbucks, which I don't mind, but they have to have coffee with their uniforms on, with their superhero uniforms. The Avengers used to have dinner and they would have their uniforms on. They wouldn't get into the civvies.
Now, Emma Frost as leader of the X-Men, okay. But then it's revealed that she's mind controlling everybody and, you know, messing with them. You know what I mean? Like that's how wait a minute. Why are we letting her in the group kind of thing?
It's worse than that because she's still diabolically evil. When she got her hands on the Phoenix Force, she killed a few billion people, like just innocents. And then in her mind space was like cannibalizing people. And keep in mind, Cyclops, Scott Summers, knows this because he also had that same power, and they just kind of all move on about it. No one cares.
If I was to write the X-Men, one of the things, first thing I'd do is Rogue would lose all the powers of Captain Marvel and just be the absorbing girl. The second thing I would do is it would be revealed that there's something wrong with Cyclops. The same injury that he can't control his mind powers makes him vulnerable to telepaths. Every major figure in his life was a telepath with mind control powers. Xavier, then his first girlfriend, Jean Grey, and then he's with Emma Frost. You're going to find out that either he's so stuck up that he can't get intimate with somebody who could, unless they get into his mind, or all this constant mind trap just makes him vulnerable to telepathy or something like that.
I think the problem with Cyclops is that he's the Captain America of, like, that leader, the military leader, tactician, ultimate good guy of the X-Men. Always was. And Claremont didn't like him. And Claremont had him leave his baby and wife to go back with Jean Grey. Now, I don't know. Maybe it wasn't Claremont. Maybe it was Bob Layton or Kurt Busiek, whoever created the X Factor. That was just – and that ruined him forever. Forever.
Yeah, he became a deadbeat dad after.
He became a deadbeat dad, and now none of the new people, and even the new people that, like the Grant Morrison new people and all of, nobody likes Cyclops. They just don't like Cyclops.
Now, the other thing, I would somehow try to figure out a way to get rid of the Phoenix Force, that it was Phoenix all along. You know what I mean? Like, I hate the idea
of going back and forth to everybody. All the stuff got old. It wasn't always bad, but it got old.
If I was to write the X-Men, Rogue, address Rogue, she loses those powers. Cyclops, we deal with the fact that he has brain damage, and that's why he's either due to that injury or because of his constant dealings with telepath. Then the third thing would be like Cyclops, like he finally fixed, and he's just like, we got to repair our reputation. Like, Emma Frost, you're out of here. We're doing a purge of all these evil mutants, and then we're going to go on a charm offensive. We have to repair the reputation of the X-Men.
I'd like them to just become a superhero team again.
I mean, I would like them to be able to go through a redemption arc, but they've made not just, I talked about Emma Frost and Scott Summers, but each of the X-Men have started to do more and more evil things. Iceman has been doing more evil stuff.
Iceman wouldn't be gay. I'm going to add that to John's list.
Yeah.
What was it? Nightcrawler. I mean, he's just killing people. He renounced his religion, weirdly.
No, yeah, what a surprise.
Do you expect that from
Marvel, the only Catholic,
Yeah, I mean, I guess I hope they do better, but I don't see them ever doing a redemption arc for him.
The sad part is that the editor of the X-Men is a guy who's been there at Marvel 35 years. He interned at Marvel. He should know all these characters. He's letting all this go. Tom Brevoort.
I would bring back Lee Forrester as Cyclops' girlfriend. I've always liked Lee Forrester. Just a regular girl.
Forrester, yeah.
She liked boats,
She liked boats. She could live in Alaska. Yeah. In fact, have the X-Men stay in Alaska.
I don't know. So, okay, now the battle starts. I don't think it's too difficult to see why Thanos and Darkseid would fight. I think Darkseid would be like, Thanos knows something about the anti-life equation. I mean, how could Thanos not know something about the anti-life equation? And Darkseid probably has an Infinity Gem somewhere at the heart of Apocalypse. Now, of course, it's Thanos without the Infinity Gauntlet, and it's Darkseid without the anti-life equation. We'll get to that later. So now, I think that's a pretty natural setup for these two. They both have something that the other guy wants, so they're going to fight. What do you guys think?
That sounds fine.
Yeah, that works.
Hey, Zart, so you start us off. Now, how does the fight go according to your way of thinking?
Depending on, I guess, when they run into each other, do they just immediately spawn in front of each other, or have they had time to figure each other out?
That's a good question. I figured Darkseid would have to know about Thanos. Like, by the time they're fighting, they know about each other, because why else? Why else would he be circling the Infinity stones and gems, and why else would he be looking for the anti-life equation? They know about Darkseid. There's no way Darkseid doesn't know about Thanos. And okay. Thanos has intelligence all over. They know about each other, and they were probably like, "We got to deal with this sooner or later."
Okay. In that particular case, I would say if Thanos can actually get a tool to utilize to beat Darkseid, Thanos would win. He's very used to taking out much more powerful entities through various means, whether it be a weapon, another character's death, anything. He can come up with a way to kill pretty much any higher being. But if he does not have access to that, I think Darkseid would pretty quickly beat him down.
Marcus, what do you think?
I think that Darkseid is more powerful than Thanos. Darkseid is at a god level, and Thanos wants to be at a god level. He's a little more human. Darkseid's more omniscient. The Omega beams. If you're playing with the Darkseid, that is multi-universal.
Yeah, at this point, he's on par with old school Anti-Monitor.
Right. I think that Darkseid's more powerful. Now, strength-wise, like if they had no powers at all and they were going punching each other, I think then Thanos has a chance. Thanos might be smarter than Darkseid, like just a better tactician, but Darkseid's more brutal than Thanos is.
Yeah, I mean, I think Thanos is a better tactician and just better at killing higher beings, but I guess to put it into perspective, I remember Thanos with a couple, not the full set, but with I think 2 or 3 gems, like the power gems. He went toe-to-toe with Odin, a Skyfather, and still lost. I mean, going toe-to-toe with Darkseid, who's kind of a similar, type of power, I think he would also just lose.
I think, Thanos has an army at his beck and call. So does Darkseid. So I think that is kind of equal footing. So I think the armies would fight, they would watch each other for a while, but ultimately it would come down to the two generals have to get someplace. Now, does Thanos come down on Apocalypse? I don't think Thanos is stupid enough to come down on Apocalypse. So he would have to, and Darkseid is arrogant enough to I'll meet you anywhere. So so that'll nullify the technical advantage of Apocalypse. So they meet someplace and they fight on a planetoid or an asteroid or something like that. I just think they would either overestimate themselves or underestimate each other, and they would both be like, "Wow, this is rougher than I thought it was going to be." I picture their shirts being ripped. Darkseid's I'm bleeding. Thanos is I might die, and then Darkseid just uses the Omega beams. I don't think there's anything Thanos could do. He's not fast enough to evade them. He, even though he could throw up shields, stuff like that, the Omega beams could kill Superman. I think the Omega beams would be the deciding factor. So, anybody agree, disagree?
I think I agree with you. Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I don't even think, to be honest, it would even come down to the Omega beams. I think he's just physically powerful enough to put him down.
Okay. I'm just thinking of if I was to write the story, I would
Oh yeah, I mean, have the finisher be the Omega beams.
Yeah, they're just oh my god, Darkseid's this. Okay, this is getting out of control. This is rougher than I thought. The Galactus, the Sphinx. Well, Galactus was toying with the Sphinx until he just decided to end the fight. I love that. That's one of my favorite single issues of all time.
Oh, that's a fun issue. Yeah, that's interesting. They have the Sphinx at Marvel as well.
Oh, I mean, if we're putting
Mongol, they have a lot of these big time characters.
I was gonna say, if you're trying to put like a movie scene in it as like how it would be a finisher. You could try with the Omega beams, kind of have like a Godzilla thing where they're both beaten and exhausted, and at the very end, Darkseid like picks him up and then fires the Omega beams down his throat, vaporizes his body, but still has his head.
I'll also say, like, I think Thanos is like crafty. I think Thanos is the better tactician, but Darkseid is a better strategy. Darkseid has more patience. And I think that's one of the things that would
Thanos has no patience. You're right.
Thanos is more impulsive. He's more emotional. So Darkseid will just be like, I could wait thousands of years for this fight. Where Thanos is like, if I wait, I'm going to lose. So I think that would be another deciding factor.
That and he kind of as you put it, Thanos often gets in his own way, whereas Darkseid doesn't really tend to do that.
Yep. Yeah. I remember Galactus went to eat Apocalypse and nothing happened. Yeah, that was great. I love that. Darkseid laughed at him. Not even Thanos would laugh at Galactus. The Infinity Gauntlet, yeah. So, but logic, we're talking without the gauntlet, without the anti-life equation.
What was the comic Byrne did? Didn't he do a Thanos first? Was that Thanos first Darkseid, or was that Thanos?
That was Thanos first Darkseid. Thanos first Darkseid versus Galactus. The Hunger.
Galactus. That was a great comic.
Yeah. So now, okay, so let's rewrite the story. Now, Thanos has the Infinity Gauntlet, but Darkseid also has the because if one doesn't have the other, then if Thanos has the Gauntlet and Darkseid doesn't have the anti-life equation, it's no contest. And if Darkseid has the anti-life equation and Galactus or Thanos doesn't have the Gauntlet, it's no contest. So now they both have their ultimate MacGuffins. The anti-life. For those of you who don't know, the anti-life equation gives the wielder the ability to destroy free will. He basically controls all minds, lives, and stuff like that. So, what do you guys think in that?
So like they actually have their their main goal, their main tool.
So now, they achieved everything. They leveled up, whatever the kids call it. So Darkseid has the anti-life equation. Thanos has the Infinity Gauntlet.
Oh, in that case, I mean,
to me, the anti-life equation is nebulous, though.
Well,
maybe Zart can help me with that.
Well, from what I know, the anti-life equation is powerful, but it works on just a universal scale. Well, granted, the Infinity Stones do as well, but the Infinity Stones were so powerful that the only thing that could really stop them was the Living Tribunal, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Darkseid is a more powerful, cooler character, but the Infinity Gauntlet is infinitely more powerful than the. Okay, whoever pulls the trigger first. Thanos.
Well, they would think. Wouldn't you think?
Thanos
Wouldn't you think that Darkseid? Well, actually, Eric is right about that.
Yeah, in these particular fights, like the only way for it to make sense is they exist. Where they got the. You know what I mean? Because Superman's powers don't work under a Marvel sun. Yeah, maybe, I don't know, but you know what I mean. Like in order for this fight to work, it's kind of like.
The thing I want to maybe add to that might put more clarification. If I remember right, when the Infinity War ended, it's not even a case of who shot first, because every entity in Celestial in Marvel tried to get the jump on Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet, and they couldn't do anything, even when they had the opportunity to fire first. And they're all universe level at the top tier.
Is Michael Bancroft here? He says hello, Bancroft.
Oh, it must be a Bancroft raid because Moromi's here.
Hey, Moromi, how you doing? Good evening, John. This is a raid. Oh no, we're getting raided. I remember the first time.
Everybody who's raiding us has to back Heroic Tales comic book.
Yeah, there you go. That's. I don't make the rules.
By number 5. This is how it goes.
I remember the first time I had a Bogan raid. I was panicking. I'm like, "What's going on?"
I will be more whore-like than John about his own comic book.
Right. Well, Marcus knows we have to get to around Heroic Tales 4 or 5.
You got to let me and Stippling and DC Miller all have stories to do, and we got to get to them.
Oh yes, it's not a secret, but Stippling is going to be working on the Printer's Devil, and I had a breakthrough. yesterday. The one thing that was driving me nuts, I think I figured it out. So Stippling, I'm going to try to send you the script by Monday night. That's my promise. And then the Patriarch. The Patriarch is finishing the story. Renzo is finishing up with the Patriarch story, and I got to get him the Patriarch #1 script. Oh my God, this is going to be so good! I can't wait. The only person who knows anything about what's going to happen in Patriarch #1 is Brian Bow. I basically told him the whole story today, and he said,
"Oh, poor Brian."
He said, "He goes, I love that." He goes, "That is such a good idea." So there you go. There you go.
So, as an aside, see this. I don't know if you can see this. If you make me big, it's blue, and it's a small sketch. Now it's hard to see.
It's hard to see. All I see is a glared paper. Oh, so you got to draw better than that, Marcus. I'm sorry.
That's the first. I mean, I'm working on this.
I'm just joking.
They're kind of like a panoramic camera since it's not a splash. And if you see on the street lamp in the foreground, it's going to be the title.
Okay.
And you're going to say Bon John. I mean, if you like it.
There you go.
That's what came in my mind. I had to draw it or sketch it anyway.
So there you go. So those of you who don't know what Marcus is alluding to, Stippling Vaughn is working on a Printer's Devil. It's going to be set in a Revolutionary War America It's during the times of the Articles of Confederation. Marcus is working on the Public Eye, and I sent him a 6-page script, or I forget, and then I sent you just like a
page other script. Yeah.
Did you got that 2-page story, right? With no words? Yeah. I don't know that. I like that little story, 2-page story.
I love that idea. 8 pages.
And Luke Stone is working on the Sleeper Agent.
So I just have some of it in my head and some of it I don't. I will tell you the every writer I've worked with is how do I fit all this into the panel? It's not. At least you don't have everybody talking in the panel. My other writer, you would have like 4 people. Like they'd have a whole conversation in one panel. I'm like, So
Oscar's working on Eddie is Doomed, and he keeps saying that. Have one focus in each panel. Have one focus, because one of the panels it was Eddie was sitting at his desk reading a comic book, and then I said, and the clock on the wall says 3 o'clock. And he's like, do you want me to focus on the comic or the clock? And I'm like,
I know how I would do that.
Yeah.
First, I would read a billion Will Eisner comics to get that idea of how that's going to work. And I'll see if I can rip him off.
Hasn't there been people overcome the mind jam while the anti-life is like impossible to break from? See, like Marcus said, there hasn't really been hard rules about the anti. I just know that the anti-life equation gives Darksied ultimate control over all free will in the universe.
Kirby changed what the anti-life was about 3 times during the New Gods, so nobody really knows. They just know it's really, really important, and it was in a human. It was in one of these humans at the beginning of New Gods.
Thanos doesn't think to protect us. Don't ignore the crucial caveat. Eric is correct. It's not an easy win. Darkseid has never found the equation. In this scenario, he has logic. He made Thanos kick his own ass. Darkseid, I still believe, could beat Thanos with the gauntlet without question, because Darkseid has many feats with or without it. Okay. What about the right? I hate that answer. Oh my God, I hate it. Marcus is messing with me. He knows. I mean, Logic knows how to push my buttons.
Hold on, I got to do something for the cat.
At least the answer wasn't Chuck Norris Logic. So there you go. Oh, the only real is they have a dance contest.
If I remember right, because I was actually looking at the actual detailed list of the anti-life equation, what it's done. Everything here, at least that I can see, is for the most part enslaving Will, like you said. But in Marvel Comics, in the Infinity War, one of the main shticks, as they're building up, trying to form a plan to beat Thanos after he has all the stones, is each of the entities is trying to mess with him, mess with his mind, trying to remove him from time, from existence. And on each level, he just resists it and beats them. So I guess it would just come down to, do you think the Mind Stone could protect him from the anti-life equation?
Okay. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So what do you guys think of the chat? To be honest, the anti-life equation never really was explained, so I can't really come up with a story. It is probably something that Jack Kirby himself never really explained, because I don't think he ever meant for Darkseid to get it. So who knows? Of course, you could it doesn't work in the DC universe, but in which case it doesn't matter. So in this particular scenario, if Darkseid has the anti-life equation, it works. If Thanos has the gauntlet, it works in this particular blending of the two. But the problem is Thanos always shoots himself in the foot. So I could see, like, by the time the fight already started, Darkseid like already has control because of the anti-life equation. If it does that, if it robs people of their free will, so like I could see like Darkseid like going through the fight and everything like that, and then also Thanos is just like, wait a minute, like he would basically, the whole thing would be a puppet show of Darkseid manipulating Thanos to do what Darkseid has wanted, because Thanos always defeats himself. So he took too long or whatever. That's what I think. I know it's like anticlimactic, but that's what I think. And feel free to disagree with me. This is just fun exploration to talk about.
Well, I mean, from what I have seen other uses of the anti-life equation, but it's always very loose as to what it means. Like Lex Luthor gets his hands on it, but nothing happens and they just disappear in a teleportation. Later on, another character who's like a genius gets their hands on it, and nothing says, just that it says that it's beautiful and then disappears. No one ever actually says what it does beyond, controlling people's wills.
Thanos is a Darkseid copy. Darkseid loses. That Darkseid. We need to set Darkseid, right?
Just going from that though, if their powers work as they should, and the stones give Thanos the same powers, I mean, you could say Darkseid could come up with a very convoluted plan like the Marvel heroes did, but that's also not a straight up fight. I would still say, in this particular case with these tools, I would think the Infinity Gauntlet with all the stones is more powerful.
Yeah, they always portrayed it like it was the ultimate power of the universe. Like could it defeat the Beyonder? Like, is the Beyonder? To me, the Beyonder has to be more powerful. Otherwise, what's the point of the Beyonder? But
it is more. Well, the Beyonders are, I guess, at this point, are more powerful than the stones, but they're supposed to be outside the universe.
I think all this is insane.
And I will say that I hate in the Marvel show when they go to the TVA and they just have Infinity Stones, gems in the drawers, paperweights.
Really? I don't watch any of the Marvel stuff. I don't have Disney Plus.
It just ruins the whole majesty of but then again, they ruin by having that time travel machine that generates Infinity Stones. They just, I don't know.
Extra Infinity Stones. They couldn't even use the multiverse to get the stupid Infinity Stones.
Well, that's what they did. They used the time travel machine to go to a parallel dimension, get the Infinity Gauntlet, bring them. So in reality, because then the Ancient One said every decision you make.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So really, that time machine creates Infinity Gauntlets. I don't know.
Well, and I think one of the original established rules is that Infinity Stones shouldn't be able to work in another universe.
Right. Yeah.
I did like that first Doctor Strange movie. I didn't see the second.
The first Doctor Strange was excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see the second one.
Yeah. Thanos with the Thanos copter. Yep, from Spidey Super Stories.
That's great. That's the best thing. He has the copter. He wins.
Oh,
well, I agree with that. He did a good voice. Yeah, the TVA nihilism.
If Darkseid and Highfather are comparable to characters like Odin and Zeus, and Thanos can beat characters with the Infinity Gauntlet, with all those soul gems and all that, all the Infinity Gems. I'm sorry. And he can beat those Skyfathers, wouldn't that imply that he could beat them, even with the tool in this case?
Right. That's too much logic for my brain. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is the chat thing? It's funny because I'm looking at the responses, and it's almost like split. I don't know. I with the Infinity Gauntlet, the way it's supposed to be, it's unbeatable. And they never said that the anti-life equation was unbeatable. It was, and it was never really described. So, yeah, I guess Thanos. I mean, you could come up with a conclusion that Thanos. I mean, you could come up with a story conclusion. Yeah, now I'm devolving into whatever the writer wants, which I hate. So,
well, the reason I say I wouldn't use a story aspect, that when you start saying, Darkseid could come up with a way of beating Thanos, which I'm sure he could, but at that point you're involving a bunch of other characters to defeat him, and that kind of defeats the point, because then you could say, well, couldn't Thanos get his entire crew and all the cosmic entities he wants to, help him fight Darkseid?
Yeah. So like I said, if we have a totally focused Thanos and he was smart, he would just end Darkseid before Darkseid even knew that there was a fight. As soon as he gets that,
he's not going to do that.
Right. That's the problem with Thanos, is he always defeats himself.
He defeats himself. The Infinity Gauntlet should have lasted 5 minutes. The whole story was like, how is Thanos going to be defeated this time?
I just thought of something. I guess because I just remembered one of the powers of Darkseid. So the Omega beams, they could vaporize people and all that. One of the additional powers that they have is, as you mentioned, they could teleport or send to other dimensions.
Right.
It's also capable of sending you outside the universe in certain circumstances. So if he removed Thanos outside of the universe where the Infinity Stones couldn't work, would that change the tide as well?
Yeah. I mean, anybody who's familiar in the comics can come up with a scenario where either one of them wins. And that's the problem, is I could come up with scenarios where Darkseid wins. I could come up with scenarios. But, in order for Thanos to win, he almost has to act out of character. He has to be totally decisive, totally first. You know what I mean? Like, just like, gauntlet. As soon as he gets the gauntlet, like, I got to get rid of Darkseid because that guy's a problem sooner or later down the road. You know what I mean? And there's nothing Darkseid could do about that. The guy basically controls all reality. What's he going to do?
He can't be the cat playing with the mouse like he always is.
Right.
I'm Darkseid, and it's the ultimate. Well, how come the villains always explain what's going on? And that's all Darkseid does. And then somebody sneaks behind him, hits him over the head with a bat. So to speak.
Rippling Vaughn says they both annihilate each other and reset the Marvel and DC universes back to 1985. And there you go.
If they would only do that, Stifling.
Yeah. The Infinity Gems. Yeah. Hey, you're just a cheap copy of me. Blam. Nebula is more powerful than the Infinity Gauntlet. What a shame that they took one of the most beautiful actresses in the world. I love Karen Gillian, and then they just make her like this bald blue freak. She was so beautiful in Doctor Who as Amy Pond.
She was still pretty hot as a blue freak, though.
She's a good actress, though. There's a couple of
she's good at Doctor Who.
The Doctor Who episode where she's trapped and she's like an older lady. And then she was like left behind in this like white room. Oh my God, she really did a good performance in that. But anyway, that has nothing to do with anything we're talking about. The only way for Thanos not to beat himself killed is montage. He's going to need a montage. Yeah, there you go. Now we're devolving into silliness. So I think, yeah, there you go. In order for Thanos to win, he has to act out of character. And I think once you start acting out of character, it shows you that he can't win.
Can't win. He can't act out of character.
Believe it or not, back in the message board days, we used to do like in It's Clobbering Time, and one of the big ones was who would win, the Authority or Superman. And I always said the Authority would win. And I'm like, why?
Well, he must have got killed for that.
Yeah, I said because you got Apollo that could hold Superman back for a minute or two. Superman would. I said, but then they got like guys like the Doctor who could rewrite reality, and Jenny Sparks who could just use. Jenny Sparks is already in Superman because there's electrical current in his head. And she can withdraw that and he collapses on the ground and blah blah blah. I said, but if Superman acted out of character and just came rushing in at the speed of light and was a bullet and took them all out, yeah, Superman could win. I said, so the only way for Superman to beat the Authority is for Superman to act out of character. And once we're arguing for the character to act out of character, then that fight ain't going to happen. Like, in order for Batman to beat Superman, he needs to make a kryptonite bullet and shoot Superman in the heart. Batman ain't going to do that, so Superman wins.
Right, that's out of character.
Right. The only way for the Punisher to beat Iron Man is if the Punisher, builds a suit of armor. The Punisher don't do that, so I don't know. Now that I'm talking, I think the only way for Darkseid, the only way for Thanos to win is for Thanos to act out of character. So, what do you guys, Logic? What do you think about that? You're the one who makes me the most nervous. You know?
Well, in Logic's world, Chuck Norris beats all of them.
Oh God! Joke is 30 years old, guys.
Well, I'm going to go update it to Kiefer Sutherland in 24.
Superman would trap the Bolt in the Phantom Zone. That's true. See, here's the thing.
There's always a way.
Darkseid never found the anti-life equation. Thanos with the gauntlet. Darkseid could beat Thanos. Yeah, without the gems, I don't think anybody argues. Thanos found the Infinity Stones and still lost to Nebula.
Well, what's more powerful, the gems or the cosmic cube?
Maybe Kryptonite bullets shot Superman. Superman was fine the next day. Yeah,
I could be wrong, but I think the gems, because didn't they tie the gems to like the cosmic entity that birthed the universe? I forget her name. There's an actual name to the character.
With the Infinity Stones still work in the Phantom Zone. I don't know, because the Phantom Zone is a different universe, right? So I guess they wouldn't. Yeah, so I'm calling this one for Darkseid just because.
I think you're right. I agree. I was thinking Darkseid from the beginning, actually.
Because that's the problem with Thanos is he literally is his own worst enemy. So at this point, guys, what do you want to do for next week? I love all these. I love all these suggestions. This is one of my favorite things I do all week. My wife's looking at me like I'm
I have something to say about that. So I was rereading some of the I stopped doing this, early Iron Mans from the 60s. Archie Goodwin, George Tucker, and Iron Man was so weak. His batteries were drained in every episode. He did not become powerful until David Michelini, John Romita, and Bob Layton run. And then he started kicking everybody's butt. Before then, he was always clutching his heart.
Right.
The epilogue busted. And he was always defeated. He never could last more than an hour.
He was complaining about his heart more than Aunt May.
He was. He was more powerful in the Avengers than he was in his own comic book. And I got all his comic books.
I like the suggestion of Black Bolt versus Black Canary.
Well, I don't know.
All he has to do is go, "Hey, baby," and the fight's over.
I mean, well, Black Bolt killed a Celestial with his scream, so I think that wouldn't be too much of a fight.
We did Black Canary once before.
Yeah, we did Black Canary versus who? I forget who we did. Huntress, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
Logic's finest. Let's see. Now I'm getting nervous. What is this comment? John, I just want Sidney Sweeney as Power. Everybody does. Thanos and Darkseid were both sitting all watching Sidney Sweeney as Power. If
Death looked like Sidney Sweeney, Thanos would have won.
Yeah, there you go. Instead of
well, I would say, I guess because I didn't say, I thought from the beginning Darkseid as well should win. If you have to have an infinite power gauntlet to even have a comparison, I mean, shouldn't that tell you who the winner would on average be?
Yeah, without the gauntlet, I think Darkseid beats Thanos. So what do you guys want to do for next week? Somebody suggested something, and I thought that was a good idea, and of course I forgot what it was.
Isn't that always the way?
Yeah, Spectre versus Ghost Rider.
Nah, well, the Spectre is really powerful.
Yeah,
you could do the Spectre versus Thanos. The Spectre is another god. Black
Bolt could level him out, right? But yeah. The Black Bolt Canary one is not even. It's not even a fun fight. It's like who would win, a tornado or a bug? Let's see. Any good one? The Sentry versus Superman.
We could do that. I have to bone up on my Sentry powers.
I mean, might be good considering, people are already arguing the Superman versus the Sentry.
Here's the one. Okay.
More powerful than Superman.
Who was it that suggested this one? Viltrumites versus Kryptonians.
Oh, that wouldn't really be a fair fight, but I mean, it could be interesting, I suppose.
Viltrumite, who was arguing? I forget who it was. But Viltrumites versus Kryptonians.
We did the Sentry versus Superman, Eric said, or it has been done. But
it has been done. Other people talked about it, but we haven't done.
Oh, yeah, not this. I was just saying it's a big conversation right now because of the Thunderbolts movie.
Ghostbusters versus Doctor Strange. I don't know why that made me laugh. Yeah. The Sentry versus Shazam. I love Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
Okay. Viltrumites versus Kryptonians would be a lot of fun. There's a lot of good stuff that we could talk about, a lot of good lore. So that's what we'll do.
Okay, sounds good. Is Harold Brooks?
Okay, there was Logic. Okay, that was my suggestion. Viltrumites versus Kryptonians. Logic, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk.
We'll let you talk without a face, like Zart. It worked out good.
Zark doesn't have a face.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I lost it in a transdimensional accident.
2 gorillas versus 5 champions. Yeah, 1 gorilla versus 100. We were talking about that at work. One silverback gorilla versus 100 men, and I said I need further information. Are we 100 Marines? Do they have weapons? A
gorilla's bite could crush your skull.
Right. My wife says a gorilla's bite could crush your skull. So here's what I say about the 100 gorillas versus 100 versus gorillas. Now, do we just randomly pick?
So this is what happens. Okay. So the gorilla.
Let me finish. We got 100 people randomly teleported from the planet, just thrown in to fight 1 gorilla. That gorilla is kicking ass because I'm not going to go up there and hold the gorilla's arm and trust that this guy that I've never met from a language that I can't speak is going to back me up. But if we get like 100 Marines versus a gorilla, that gorilla is going down. You know what I mean? So like just 100 random men. Most guys are going to stand back. Most guys are going to cower. Most guys aren't going to, we're not going to understand like strategy and stuff like that. So there's my point. What were you going to say, Marcus?
Oh, something similar. So you got 100 guys, and say they're all in good shape, young guys, don't have to be Marines. As soon as the gorilla tears the head off 2 of them, all the guys are running the other way anyway. Nobody's going to fight the gorilla. They're going to go get a gun.
Right. Well,
that would never happen.
Do they have weapons? Because remember, cavemen used to take down mammoths. You know what I mean? But they trusted each other.
The gorilla. How strong is a gorilla? As strong as how many men?
The original. I guess to give you one more context for it, the original setup for the question was if you took 100 men. So these aren't being men that are just regularly showing up because a regular dude is going to run away from a gorilla.
Right.
It's 100 dudes that for whatever reason, you can make up whichever reason, they're going to kill the gorilla. Like
right.
They're all going to try it.
We need some further information. These are 100 people that like want to fight a gorilla. You know what I mean?
Bloodlusted.
Right. Not just like me and Phil Moskowitz and then that guy who makes my balloon. We're gonna run away. And Mark says we heard Miss Longbach's voice. Mark this day on your calendar. So yeah, I agree. They gotta have. This is a funny comment. We won the primate wars already. Yeah. Today we're too soft to fight a gorilla.
Oh yeah.
Well,
Enchantress Marvel versus Enchantress DC. You don't trust the bro code to take down a gorilla?
No, I don't.
I'm gonna tell a story. My wife probably hasn't even heard the story, but back in Albuquerque, I got to a fight.
Oh, it's another out.
There was a couple of guys versus me, and I just said, I'm gonna fight you. The guy that was making all the noise. I said, he goes, yeah, but I got 4 guys. I said, I don't care. I'm going to take you out. So do you want to fight? Because I said, I'm going to ignore everybody else and I'm going to go after you. I can't win against 4 guys, but I could take you out, and that ended the fight before it even started because humans.
You fight too much, John. I think your wife will agree with me.
Not anymore.
Back in the day.
From now on, I'm on my best behavior.
And if you could talk her to come on stream, I bet you she could sell some comics. You have to look at you.
Mike Tyson wanted to fight a gorilla. Yeah, Mike Tyson was literally trying to set up a fight between him and a silverback. I think Mike Tyson would get destroyed. Oh my God, would I have watched
He's going to fight that guy on YouTube as? Nina.
Oh, the Boy Commandos versus the Howling Commandos.
Hey, that's kind of interesting.
How hot are the girls that are watching? All the hot girls say hello.
From what I hear, like the general consensus is that it would have the zombie effect of how in zombie movies people get picked up and torn apart barehanded.
Yeah,
the gorilla is really strong, but with 100 dudes all trying to rush it at the same time, it would probably just rip it to pieces. Because it's all their combined strength.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to work that way.
Logic wants you to know that he never mentioned Sydney Sweeney in a Power Girl outfit. Only wholesome conversations. Now everybody's ashamed. That should be John. Yeah, I meant watching the gorilla fight. I want to do it. It's clobbering time. John Wick versus somebody, but who would be a good John Wick? You know,
Red Hood, the Punisher.
John Wick versus the Punisher.
Chuck Newton. Charles Bronson.
John Wick versus the Punisher would be a good.
Wait, no, Charles Bronson. He's the original John Wick, right? You bring back the 70s and you got Bronson movies. Well, you know, that's the original one, right? Now it's just kind of times 10 with John Wick. Am I wrong?
Chimps already gang up on gorillas. John Wick versus Neo. There you go. John Wick versus Neo versus Ted from Bill and Ted's.
First the quarterback he played in the Replacements.
Yeah. So next week we'll do Viltrumites versus Kryptonians, and then what was the other one? That's John Wick versus the Punisher. We'll put that one.
That's a good one. I like that one. I do like that one.
You John Wick versus the Punisher, and you said Superman versus Sentry. I don't know which one you want to pick, but
yeah, I want to do Viltrumites versus Kryptonians. Logic made me think of a couple of things that I think would be fun to talk about.
That sounds.
I'm gonna go. I've been invited on a what's her name? I always get the name mixed up.
Thinking Critical.
What's that? Yeah, I'm going to be on Thinking Critical tomorrow, the aficionados at 10 a.m. tomorrow. But I'm going to go now to what's her name? If I say the wrong name, people are going to get mad at me because she's a controversial person. But the woman who makes this comic.
Oh yeah, Flip City, sure. Why is she controversial?
Because I was going to say Katie did, but it's not Katie.
It's not Katie did. It's oh man, it's right on my tip of my
Katie Flips. Right. I'm going to be on her channel.
That would be fun.
Yeah, she's a sweetheart.
Fun.
I gotta bring up Twitter now so I could get the link because she sent it to me on Twitter. But I forget the name of the channel. What am I doing? I'm hitting buttons and things are popping up, and I'm doing the wrong thing.
Well, anyway, we'll let John do that. I'm on the studio tomorrow. We're drawing Ripclaw. By the way, any of the people want my drawings, I got to get rid of these things. Jesus.
She's going to be on the studio tomorrow too, right?
She's going to be on the studio. That's right. She should.
What is her name? Now
these are for sale. If Logic's Finest wants, this one.
Kitty Flips. Yeah, and the name of the channel is
they're for sale. All my stuff.
About to roll out, boss. Have a good rest of your night.
Flip City Magazine is the name of the channel. So go to Flip City Magazine. I'm going over there now. So
all right, we'll take a look at you there. Thanks, John.
All right. See you guys tomorrow. Yeah, see you in the morning.
Nice streaming with you.
All right, bye-bye.
Oh, yeah, great being with you.
Yeah, nice meeting you, Zach.